Hey dudes, today we have a pretty momentous occasion ahead of us. This is the first video of my videography series, and unfortunately, because of the fact that I've already started doing videography before I started making these videos, I am a little bit more experienced than my intention with this channel, which is to basically coming in knowing almost nothing. But I figured it would be a good idea to go through some of the edits that I've made before in my past. I'll basically just touch upon things that I wish that I knew back then that I do know now that would have made them better, but I think that the way that I was thinking about making them even back then wasn't too off base, right? So kind of want to just give you guys a realistic look at what your edits might look like when you first get started, and hopefully if you have some useful takeaways, your first videos could even look better than mine. Or you might just be here to be entertained, that's fine too. So the first video that I did was actually a workout edit that I did with my girlfriend at the time, Renee. Just in case a few of you are curious, she's back in Calgary, I'm now in Toronto. She's happy, I'm happy, not the point of the video. But we're gonna go through the video that we made together, and I'll pause every once in a while and go through things that I messed up on, as well as what I was thinking about when I was making this thing. And I'll also mention before we get started that I made the music to this video, and I was just trying to, like the theme that I was trying to go for was kind of spacey, but really chill, just like super relaxed, so that it felt almost otherworldly as we were going through the weightlifting stuff. Okay. All right, so this is the initial introduction to what you're going to see a lot of, and that is just overexposed image after overexposed image after overexposed image. Another thing is that my exposure changes while I'm filming. So everything was on an automatic setting. I remember when I was filming this, that means that if I would move from a dark viewpoint to a light viewpoint, the camera's exposure would change and it would close its aperture a little bit, or it would automatically adjust the ISO such that it would darken everything. That looks absolutely horrible, incredibly amateurish. So if you are going to be filming something, make sure it's not overexposed, and make sure that you don't have automatic exposure adjustments. Like, you gotta just set the shot up with intent. That is an important shot. So one of the biggest things that I was focusing on here is I needed to make sure that the music fit in perfectly with the video. And actually, this is one of the reasons why I added those little high bells in this song, was so that I could have a lot of transition points. We were using a 50mm prime lens on an A6000. It had a 1.8 aperture as well, so that gave us a lot of nice bokeh, like blurry backgrounds. As far as I recall, we basically just tried to use the bokeh as much as possible to give an illusion of professionalism. Because non-professional stuff doesn't have bokeh, it doesn't have the blurry backgrounds. So keeping me out of focus and then making me go into focus in that scene, for example, that was semi-intentional. We did that a few times. Trying to get other things in the frame as well, that was one of the things that I was trying to focus on. This is because I was copying other people who had done the same thing. Another one of the main things that we were trying to go for was filming from angles that weren't just at eye level. As soon as you're filming at an elevation level that isn't just normal, regular eye level, you start to get pretty interesting shots because you're viewing the world from in a way that you don't usually view it. I wasn't trying to do anything crazy with effects. I wanted this sequence to be pretty chill, and I also didn't want to push it with anything that I wasn't ready to show off. And by that I mean I knew that I couldn't do really cool zoom transitions or anything super technical at this moment. I set myself an expectation of just do normal cuts, but cut it well to the music so that it's still interesting enough to watch. And we'd also just kind of say like, how many interesting shots could we get, right? So shooting through the weights right there, shooting, putting my hands on the handle, all that kind of stuff. So it was a pretty simple edit, and I made it that way intentionally. I knew that there was only so many things that I had the ability to do at that point in time, but I wanted to make something that I wasn't completely disgusted with. If you try to push far beyond what your skill level will allow you to create, then you're gonna do a really crappy job of that. So a better strategy, I find, is, you know, pick a target that is hard enough to be worth working towards, but not so hard that it seems completely unrealistic to you that you're going to be able to accomplish that type of edit. So don't go and find the absolute best edit that you can possibly find and expect to be able to pull that off very well. Pick something that is something that you haven't done before, but that you realistically could do a decent job of if you tried hard and if you copied what they were doing well enough. At this point, I should probably mention, in case there's those of you who have not seen my preamble video on how to learn skill sets, one of the most important elements of getting good at a particular skill is at the beginning, you have to start copying what other people have done, like just straight up replicating them. This allows you to worry about doing the actual technical details of getting the shots and editing it together without having to put too much effort into making something super creative and honest. If you were to try to make something super creative at that point in time, you'd actually probably feel a lot more self-conscious about being able to show it to other people, and then that impedes your progress of being able to feel a passion towards making more things. So you have to have something that you have a little bit of a detachment to, which is, I'm just trying to replicate somebody else's work. But then if you're replicating somebody else's work, they probably already thought about how they did it, and by just replicating them, it's more likely that you're going to create something that's at least pretty cool to show other people. Then you show other people and they're like, damn, that was pretty good. And you're like, man, it feels pretty good to have other people say that was pretty good. And then that interest and passion is going to snowball into you wanting to make more videos. And then you making more videos is how you go from sucking to not sucking. And the quicker you can get to not sucking, then you can start being a little bit more creative with your videos and not just copying other people and saying like, you know, I've made 10 videos of copying this style of thing and doing a lot of speed ramping and doing zooms in and push-ins and whatnot, but what if I do this type of thing differently? And your brain will just start thinking of ideas as you are making your initial projects. So again, just start out by copying other people. You are not going to invent something new on your first shot. Okay, the next experiment that I ran when I was trying to make videos was my running through cities series. I'm gonna cut really quickly through some of the scenes from my running through videos, and I will tell you how badly they suck and some of the things that I should have done differently. So the first one that I made was running through Prague, and it starts off very simple. So one of the biggest things that made my videos look interesting and I think got them a lot of attention was just the color grading that I did. And spoiler alert, I actually just got magic bullet looks for not that much money, if you know what I mean. And then I would go and use magic bullet looks presets as my basic color grading template on all of these videos. So this wasn't me, that was total cheating. So I didn't do too many special effects heavy things during this video. I was using warp stabilizer on a few of the shots that were a little bit shaky. One of the things that I did do though, you can see, is I would pan around things and I try to keep them in the center, but if I wasn't able to keep them in the center, you can see that that gives you a feeling of like, this isn't particularly professional because you're used to, like, you know what it should be. And anything where you know what it should be, but it's deviating from that, that's unprofessional. That's not good enough. By the way, that's just a general tip, like keep that one in mind. If I were to do this today, if I had the hardware, I would film in 4K and I would move around that object. And then in post-production, I would punch everything down into 1080p and I'd have a whole bunch of extra room to work with so that every frame, I could make sure that that statue or whatever it is that I'm trying to frame stayed perfectly centered. And I'd have full detail at 1080p anyway, and it would allow me to very smoothly move around things. Anyway, this one doesn't get too much more interesting than this. The next one that I made was running through Barcelona, and this is the one that got quite popular. And so let's go through this. Again, the color grade got the most amount of attention in terms of comments, I think, but it was just a magic bullet looks template. Also, the minimalistic title that I made for the beginning of this and all of the subsequent running through videos was just me following a really simple After Effects tutorial on how to do things with shapes. We'll go into that stuff more in this series later. So I got better at speed ramping this one, where I speed up the footage and then slow it down. And I started to add effects like zoom ins and things like that. But I didn't really do too many special things in running through Barcelona. I basically just sped up the footage, a whole bunch of terribly overexposed footage. So you can see another example here where I'm moving around this fountain, where the fountain isn't staying perfectly centered. It continuously gets readjusted, and that just doesn't feel very organic. And so one of the things that I've learned since making these videos is that everything has to feel organic. And what does that mean? It means feeling like it's a natural extension of your natural expectations of how reality operates and how reality feels and looks and sounds, right? So another thing is that when I'm zooming through these hallways, I don't have any sound effects, first of all. Like, if you're going to be zooming through something, you'd expect the sides to be blurred, and you'd also expect like a whooshing sound to go through. And if maybe you came really close to something on your right side, you should only have the right audio maybe have a little bit of that whoosh sound, because that's where you're passing by. And I think honestly that was one of the biggest weaknesses that I had while making these running through videos, is I didn't add sound effects, and that's huge. Sound effects are maybe even more important than the visuals for placing you somewhere, right? Like, imagine the sound of waves crashing on the seashore, right? And it's like nice and relaxing and everything. That probably emotionally places you next to the beach more so than just looking at video of waves. I'm not sure if this is just me or not. In any case, sound design was definitely something that I did not pay enough attention to when I was making these videos. By the way, my shirt just changed because it turns out that half my footage that I took was corrupted. So this is actually 2 days later. So anyway, last video I want to go through here is my running through Israel video. And I think I did the best job on this one, but still far from where I need to get to. And I added quite a few more nifty effects on this video, and really it was basically just a test bed for trying to add in as many cool looking effects as I possibly could. But it still suffers from my biggest issues, which are things like incredibly overexposed footage, and every once in a while I'll have quite robotic camera movements as well. Although it did get better in this video, but still, as I'm walking through and zooming through corridors and streets, I have no sound effects, and again, it's just such a weakness to these videos. One thing I do notice that a lot of videographers do is they'll go and look at transition effects that different people add to their videos, and they think that that's what makes the transitions feel good. But that's not actually the case at all. Good videographers know that when they're using a transition, it's to move you from one scene to the next with a sense of continuity and congruency. When you see inexperienced editors going and thinking that adding zoom transitions or twirling transitions or just a whole bunch of things that they learn on YouTube tutorials for After Effects is going to make their videos look professional, it doesn't. And it's because they don't understand that those transitions are supposed to be used as a tool for enhancing the continuity of the emotional expression of the scene. Right? So any video edit is basically just supposed to impart on you a particular type of feeling. And so it's not that the transitions or the effects themselves are what makes the video good. They are supposed to be complementary. So learning how to use these transitions rather than just learning how to put them in a video is an incredibly important skill set. So one of the reasons why I say that you have to copy somebody's entire edit is to understand the reasons why they're using particular transitions rather than just using those transitions in isolation. So I did use some effects a little bit more effectively in running through Israel here. For example, the Luma fade transition became very popular after Sam Kohler had used it in a few of his videos. And people started just using it willy-nilly. Without really understanding the intention that he had behind when he was using those transitions. So I figured that a good use of that transition would be like this, for example, where I'm going from daytime to nighttime, and that also coincides with the transition in the music, which I made quite starkly different from the beginning section of the song, such that we could transition into night mode. And then this part of the song is entirely focused on having night being portrayed. This was in Tel Aviv. And as always, you can see that any of the camera movements that I had were always synced as closely as possible to the music, so that it felt like you were almost dancing to the music as it was moving around. And then I had a sundown reverse so that it looks like the sun was coming up, so that I could go through this desert scene, and the music also comes down a lot. And so while it's in this down tempo area, I'm just going through the desert without much to experience. So I really did try to tie the music in as much with the footage as I possibly could. And then when the music comes back up again, you'll be able to see that I use a few transitions, like these zoom punch-ins. So they're not zooming into something completely unrelated, they're actually zooming into something you can see in the scene. And then they tie into one of my favorite transitions that I've ever made, where I have the sun coming out from behind a building, and I decided that I would have a solar flare from the previous scene tied into that. But again, as I'm going through these streets here, you can see that there's no audio, there's no blurring. I'm going so fast through some of the streets in Old Jerusalem that would fit so well with different kind of sound effects, but again, just not what I kept in mind at the time. So yeah, I tried out quite a few new effects in this video, and if I had maybe watched a few more examples of other people doing similar types of videographic projects through different cities, then I might have had a better idea of how to tie in audio and visuals, but it was definitely a fun project regardless. And I think I got the most interesting footage for this video as well because I was in Israel for 3 weeks. Okay, so that's all for my quick run through of my running through cities videos. I think you get the point of what I felt were my biggest weaknesses, and so at this point, I think one of the things that I should be focusing on is making sure to tie in visuals and audio, and making sure that every scene that I take is properly exposed and also ties in logically to the next scene, and having effects that aren't just there for flashiness, but actually serve to aid in the emotional message that I'm trying to get across in a video edit, because these things aren't meant to be seen in isolation. Anyway, that's about it for this video. In the next video, I'm going to show you a quick edit that one of my favorite YouTubers has made, and I'm going to break down what it is I think that is special about that video edit, and then I'm also going to set up a plan for how to replicate what looked good and what felt good about that video. And then my next video will be going through the process of actually recreating that edit and doing the replication of it myself. And then you'll also get to see the final product, and we'll see how closely I was able to match their styling. And hopefully there's details in how I'm thinking about things that you guys can use if you want to go and start replicating other people's work as well, and having a good idea of what to look for when you're looking for, like, why does this feel so good? Why does this look so professional? Until then, still don't have a good way to finish my videos. So, bye-bye.